Disney's live-action remake of Snow White has turned into a swirling storm of divided opinions, political uproar, and runaway budgets. What was meant to be a grand celebration of a classic fairy tale has become an ever-growing source of controversy, sparking questions about whether Disney has finally gone too far. From the casting decisions to behind-the-scenes tensions, there's plenty to unpack. More importantly, industry insiders are starting to wonder, will these mounting issues lead to one of the most colossal box office failures in modern Disney history? It all seemed so promising at first. A bright young star, a beloved story, and a studio known for magical blockbusters. Yet the moment Rachel Zegler was named the new face of Snow White, the internet split in half. Some cheered for a fresh and inclusive take on an old classic. Others denounced it as a betrayal of the original tale, which famously hinged on Snow White's skin as white as snow. But if you think that debate alone was enough to drive fans into endless feuds, you haven't heard about the other shockwaves. Ones that push beyond mere casting drama and into deeper waters of social media scandals, budget nightmares, and unrelenting fan scrutiny. Word around Hollywood is that this film's budget has soared to jaw-dropping heights, possibly breaking the $300 million mark. On the record, official sources claim a figure hovering around $200 to $250 million, but others insist that the combination of reshoots, rewriting, and production halts pushed the cost far higher. Disney, typically confident with its live-action remakes, has found itself eyeing the numbers more nervously than usual. Pulling off a successful blockbuster is already a formidable task, but when you spend a fortune on costumes, special effects, new set designs, and repeated shoots, you need a massive return just to break even. Early projections painted a somewhat hopeful picture, with experts predicting an opening weekend that might at least keep the film afloat. But as actual data trickled in, those forecasts sank. Now, many analysts predict an opening box office nowhere near high enough to offset such an extravagant production. At this stage, the term box office bomb is lurking ominously on the horizon, threatening to join the list of Disney misfires if something doesn't drastically change. Disney's decision to cast Rachel Zegler as Snow White unleashed an online storm the likes of which nobody quite anticipated. The original Snow White is arguably the most iconic of all Disney princesses, a legend since 1937's animated classic. Fans have grown up with her delicate features, pitch black hair, and most notably, skin said to be as white as snow. So when Disney announced a Latina actress for the live-action version, critics questioned if this diverged too far from the essential premise. Some pointed to the Brothers Grimm source material, claiming it was being rewritten in ways that betrayed tradition. On the other side stood supporters who argued that fairy tales belong to everyone and that the universal appeal of Snow White had always been about her kindness, optimism, and unwavering hope, rather than the literal shade of her skin. They celebrated the studio's attempt to make the tale accessible to a broader audience. But as the debates escalated, Rachel Zegler herself jumped into the fray, defending her casting choice. She maintained that a fairy tale princess need not be confined by appearance, especially in a world that's constantly evolving. While that stance earned her applause from part of the audience, it also amplified the pushback from traditionalists who were quick to label this a politically correct rewrite at the expense of classic Disney charm. If there was a moment that truly set the fandom alight, it was Rachel's candid remarks about the 1937 Snow White being extremely dated. She pointed out that the original film largely revolved around a romance with a prince who barely had any character depth, and that Snow White herself spent most of the story awaiting rescue. According to Zegler, the new film aims to recast the heroine as a powerful figure rather than a damsel in distress. Her critiques weren't entirely without merit. Women in film have often been relegated to passive, love-struck roles. Yet for a vocal group of fans, it felt like she was trashing a treasured piece of Disney history. Social media exploded with fervent defenses of the original Snow White, lauding it for its artistry, significance, and innocence. Suddenly, it wasn't only about whether Rachel Zegler was right or wrong in her assessment, but whether a Disney princess should ever openly criticize one of the company's crown jewel classics. The standoff became emblematic of Hollywood's challenge. modernizing beloved stories without erasing the nostalgia fans hold dear. Just when it seemed like the casting dispute might die down, Rachel Zegler's political views roared into the spotlight. During the 2024 presidential election, Donald Trump secured re-election, igniting turmoil across social media. In a heated moment, Zegler took to Instagram with a blistering message proclaiming her dismay and describing another 4 years under Trump as a kind of future she wanted no part of. She didn't mince words, even wishing that Trump and his supporters would never know peace. Another sticking point for this live-action film has been the reimagining or outright removal of the beloved Seven Dwarfs. Early on, word spread that Disney intended to sidestep potential portrayals deemed insensitive, which led to rumors of these characters being changed to magical creatures. While the precise details remain a bit murky, leaked set photos seem to confirm a set of colorful, human-sized companions instead of the classic dwarf characters. Instantly, longtime fans cried foul, accusing Disney of throwing away a cornerstone of the original fairy tale for the sake of political correctness. At the heart of every Hollywood production lies one inescapable reality: profit. Despite the social media chatter and behind-the-scenes changes, box office results are what truly determines success or failure. Initially, Snow White showed some modest promise in early projections. Some analysts predicted an opening weekend in the $60, $70 million range, which, while not extraordinary for a film with such a large budget, might have pointed to a safe outcome. That optimism, however, didn't last. Updated forecasts began painting a grimmer picture: a mid to low $50 million opening, or even worse, underperforming in the $40 million range. For a film rumored to have a $300 million price tag, that's a recipe for financial catastrophe. So, is Snow White doomed to be a cautionary tale about pushing classic properties too far from their roots? Or is there still a chance for a last-minute miracle? At this point, anything could happen. Audiences might flock to theaters out of curiosity, propelled by the very controversies critics claim will sink the film. In a media-saturated world, there's no denying that even negative publicity can drive awareness. But with the budget ballooning, controversies raging, and tensions boiling over political stances, a stable and profitable outcome feels less like a sure bet and more like an unlikely dream. For Disney, the stakes are massive. A flop of this scale could send shockwaves through the studio's strategy of live-action remakes. Already, fans and analysts alike are questioning whether the era of constant reboots is losing steam. Some argue that the brand needs a fresh direction, brand new stories, or more thoughtful adaptations that honor the spirit of the originals without alienating generations of loyal viewers. Others believe that the controversies swirling around Snow White might be the perfect impetus for a broader conversation about inclusivity, representation, and where the boundary between evolution and tradition truly lies. In the end, maybe the greatest twist of all is this: a tale about a kind-hearted princess has prompted some of the most intense debates in Hollywood. Snow White was always a story about innocence and resilience. Now, it's become a spotlight on cultural transformation and corporate risk-taking, for better or for worse. Whether the film soars against all odds or collapses under the weight of its own controversy, one thing's certain: nobody will look at this classic fairy tale quite the same way again.